All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely reframe how we look at patents. Now, if you're like most non-specialists, you probably picture a patent as just this thick, intimidating stack of legal documents, right? A purely passive shield that somehow magically grants an inventor a long-term monopoly while sitting in a locked drawer. But we're shifting far away from that passive legal lens today and moving toward a highly dynamic, strategic one. We're unpacking some truly fascinating research by Pascal Corbel and Francis Fernandez to see how the absolute most innovative, dominant companies on the planet actually treat their patents. Because for them, patents aren't just legal protections. They are active, multifaceted strategic resources that literally shape entire markets. So let's kick things off with a fundamental question. Is that traditional view of a patent, the ironclad guarantee of a 20-year absolute monopoly, actually accurate in today's cutthroat business environment? Traditional economic theory paints the patent as this impenetrable fortress. The idea is you lock down the core technology, you completely block your competitors from entering the space, and you just sit back and rake in the profits for 2 decades. Sounds pretty perfect on paper, right? But as the researchers point out, this is a highly restrictive and surprisingly fragile way of looking at it. In the real world, relying on a patent purely as monopoly is a strategy that is just riddled with vulnerabilities. Instead of an impenetrable brick wall, think of a patent more like a barrier that actually invites a clever detour. You have to remember, a patent protects a specific combination of means, not the final end result. Take the color television wars, for example. Patents covering the PAL color TV technology absolutely could not stop the development of the distinct CCAM technology, which gave consumers the exact same vibrant picture at the end of the day. And it gets even more fascinating, because holding a major patent can actually incentivize your competitors to innovate completely around you. When Xerox held these massive, dominant patents in photocopying, it didn't just freeze Canon in its tracks. No, it aggressively spurred Canon to develop entirely new and sometimes vastly superior technologies, just so they could legally bypass Xerox's wall. Because as the researchers explicitly point out, true absolute monopolies are incredibly rare. They are the exception, not the rule. Now, sure, there are famous historical anomalies. Look at Polaroid. They managed to hold a massive monopoly over the entire instant photography market for years by just constantly renewing this incredibly dense web of patents. And obviously, the pharmaceutical industry still heavily relies on patents for durable monopolies on specific chemical molecules. But for the vast majority of industries, clients are inevitably going to demand a second source to avoid supply chain risks, or competitors will simply find a way to build a better mousetrap. So that leaves us wondering, if a patent isn't a guaranteed monopoly, what exactly is it? Well, here's the crucial point. If they aren't just defensive walls, they are actually massive financial engines. Let me give you a prime example. IBM was famously reported to generate well over $1 billion, yes with a B, purely from patent royalties. Just think about that for a second. Companies are realizing they can't always extract maximum value just by putting a technology into a physical product they sell themselves. In our modern knowledge economy, intangible assets are the real gold mine. Firms like Thomson actually created entire dedicated patent valuation departments because an active, aggressive licensing strategy can take a dusty, forgotten archive of old patents and transform it into a massive direct revenue stream. To really grasp this shift, we've got to stop seeing the patent as a one-dimensional legal shield and start looking at it like a Swiss Army knife for corporate strategy. This brings us to a beautiful, highly practical, theoretical model proposed in the research. They mapped out 4 distinct axes, or roles, that a patent plays within a sophisticated company. And the takeaway here is absolutely vital. If you are only using a patent to try and stop someone from copying your specific product, you are leaving 3 other incredibly powerful, potentially lucrative tools just sitting unused in the box. Let's pull out the first blade of our multi-tool, Axis A, the exclusion blade. Now, this is the classic, traditional role we were just talking about. It's the limited, though still super important capability of excluding competitors and creating technical differentiation for your products. It's really about protecting your specific technological advancements so that when consumers look at your product on the shelf, it has unique, protected features that the competition legally cannot replicate exactly. It creates a technical moat, even if it's one that might eventually get bypassed. But here is where it starts getting really interesting. Let's flip open the second blade. Axis B, the financial blade. As we saw with IBM, this means licensing out your technology for direct royalty payments. But for the true corporate insiders, it goes so much deeper than that. Patents are highly mobile, intangible assets, which means they can actually be used for international tax optimization. By strategically concentrating a patent portfolio in a subsidiary located in a highly favorable tax zone, a multinational group can channel intra-group royalty flows to legally optimize their overall financial results. Suddenly, the patent completely transitions from a legal document into a pure financial instrument. Now, let's move on to the third blade, Axis C, the deterrence blade. In a lot of tech-heavy industries, holding a massive portfolio of patents forces cross-licensing truces. Think of it exactly like a Cold War standoff. If a competitor sues you for patent infringement, having a huge portfolio of your own almost guarantees you can immediately countersue them for infringing on one of yours. The legal battles between Adobe and Macromedia are a perfect example of this cross-litigation leading to a forced mutual truce. This deterrence is so vital to modern manufacturing that PSA Peugeot Citroën actually named their patent department Patents and Freedom to Operate. They treat their portfolio like a strategic mine-clearing operation, making sure they can actually build their cars without getting bogged down in endless lawsuits. And finally, we have the fourth blade, Axis D, the innovation blade. This is where patents are used entirely internally to stimulate creativity and manage complex knowledge. You see, a patent is a highly formalized, meticulously detailed technical document, and that rigor makes it an incredible built-in tool for internal knowledge management. It perfectly tracks the history of R&D projects over long stretches of time. Furthermore, smart companies use patents to actively track performance and financially motivate their engineering teams. They reward their best inventors with significant bonuses and internal prestige based on the patents they successfully file, fundamentally driving a culture of continuous internal innovation. So how do we unite all these different blades? The authors anchor their findings in a major strategic framework called the resource-based view, or RBV. In simple terms, this framework treats the patent as a core firm resource. According to the theory, for any resource to give you a sustainable edge, it needs to hit 4 marks. It must be rare, it must be valuable, it must be hard to imitate, and it must be non-substitutable. A patent definitely hits the first 3. Every patent is a unique, valuable, legally protected invention. But as we learned with Xerox and Canon, it absolutely can sometimes be substituted by a clever workaround. And because of that one vulnerability, just owning the patent isn't nearly enough to guarantee success. To actually extract true value from this resource, a company has to develop what the researchers call dynamic capabilities. Let's connect this to the reality of running a business today. In a turbulent, high-velocity market, having a brilliant patent just sitting in a legal drawer does absolutely nothing for your bottom line. You need the dynamic capability to constantly integrate, build, and reconfigure your skills to meet rapidly changing market demands. You have to actively maneuver your patent portfolio, constantly analyzing the landscape and choosing exactly when to litigate, when to license for cash, and when to cross-license for a truce as the entire environment shifts around you. The authors map out a really clear progression for how this actually happens in practice. You can't just own a patent and expect to win the market overnight. You have to evolve from step 1, merely possessing the raw resource, to step 2, actively applying specific human competences. This means building specialized teams where deep, complex technical engineering knowledge perfectly overlaps with razor-sharp legal expertise. Only by actively combining the raw resource with these highly specialized human competences do you finally reach step 3, building the overarching organizational capabilities that actually deliver a true sustainable competitive advantage. A well-managed patent portfolio ultimately feeds directly into 4 critical capabilities for any modern firm. First is appropriation, actively capturing the financial benefits of your hard-earned innovation. Second is relational capability, using those patents to confidently negotiate R&D partnerships, foster cooperation, or deter aggressive competitors. Third is combinatory capability, utilizing the structured, meticulously recorded knowledge inside those patents to cross-pollinate ideas and avoid internal information silos across your departments. And fourth is valuation, the active process of turning these intangible assets into measurable, bottom-line financial value through strategic licensing or by boosting the company's overall reputation as a top-tier innovator. Which really brings us full circle. Knowing that a patent is not just a passive defensive wall, but rather a high-powered financial engine, a diplomatic bargaining chip, and an internal innovation tracker, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Look closely at your own company's portfolio, or even the companies you choose to invest in. Ask yourself, are they actively wielding these patents as dynamic, multifaceted strategic weapons? Or are they just paying filing fees to store dusty archives? Because the answer to that question might literally be the exact difference between leading the market and being completely left behind. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep digging deeper.